He walked in looking homeless. They mocked him. 2 weeks later, they were begging for his forgiveness. One coat, one cane, $1 billion truth they never saw coming. Rain fell softly as the old man stepped through the glass doors of the Rosewood Table, the most upscale restaurant in all Portland. Crystal chandeliers shimmered from the high ceiling, casting a gentle glow across polished wooden floors. Evening gowns and tailored suits floated past one another, like a silent performance, set to the hum of smooth jazz. But all eyes quickly shifted to the lone figure at the entrance, an elderly black man in a worn-out coat, faded slacks, and shoes so tattered they looked like they'd survived a whole winter on their own. His face was kind, yet his eyes carried the weight of a life fully lived. No one knew his name, only that he stood there with a plain wooden cane and a plastic bag dangling from one wrist, like a homeless man who had accidentally wandered into a world not meant for him. "Sir, Mendy," the restaurant manager called out, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Her voice dripping with false politeness and barely masked contempt. "The homeless shelter is 5 blocks east of here." A few quiet laughs rippled through the dining room. Lipstick moused behind linen napkins as whispered comments passed between perfectly groomed companions. The man didn't flinch. He looked around with a calm gaze, more observant than offended. "I'd like a table," he said softly but clearly, without a hint of pleading. "This isn't a soup kitchen, old man," Mendy sneered. "Even the cheapest appetizer here is over $60. "Then I'll take that," he replied, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a crumpled but genuine $100 bill. Everything froze. But just as Mendy narrowed her eyes and prepared to order him out, another voice cut in. "I'll seat him." It was Ellie, a waitress in her 20s with chestnut hair, warm eyes, and a smile untouched by the cynicism of her surroundings. She gently took a menu and gestured for the man to follow her. "Thank you for coming in, sir," she said sincerely. The man gave a quiet nod. "Thank you for seeing me." They had no idea that this small act, on an otherwise ordinary rainy night, would change the fate of everyone in that room. Forever. He returned to the Rosewood Table 2 days later, then again a week after that, and once more on a busy Friday evening. Each time in the same old gray coat, the same worn shoes. Each time he paid in full, never complained, never hinted at who he really was. He spoke little, but he noticed everything and remembered. He remembered the way Mendy still wore the same smirk, the same contempt, discreetly swapping top-shelf wines for cheaper substitutes guests never noticed. He noted how Gloria, the owner, only stopped by tables occupied by the wealthy or well-known, never bothering with the average diner like himself. But he also noticed other things. He saw how Ellie always greeted guests with the warmth of a kitchen light on a rainy day. She remembered the names of regulars, smiled as she served dessert, and always said, "Thank you," even when the tip was just a few coins. He watched Judge, the head chef, work with rare precision, from the way he drizzled sauce over the fish to the delicate slices of lemon peel. Every plate Judge sent out looked like it was made for family, not strangers. One evening, the old man sat near the kitchen door, where the sizzled pans and fragrant aromas drifted freely, and overheard Judge speaking softly on the phone. "The doctor says it'll take $20,000 for Lena's surgery. I'm trying. I'll probably pick up another private dinner next week. Judge, a name, a child." The old man jotted it down in his weathered notebook. He also noticed how Mendy claimed the high tipping table for himself, edging the other servers out to less favorable sections. And Ellie, night after night, was always assigned to the quietest part of the restaurant. Yet she treated every guest like they were the most important person in the world. The more he returned, the clearer everything became. The Rosewood Table wasn't just a fine dining restaurant. It was a stage. And he, in the role of a silent observer, had seen every performance, who was genuine and who wore a mask. And so he began to make a plan. Not to expose anyone, but to shine a light. On Saturday night, the Rosewood Table glowed with lights. A jazz trio played softly in the corner of the lobby. The clink of glasses blended with the cheerful laughter of wealthy guests. As soon as the old man entered, drenched in rainwater, his hair slicked to his scalp beneath the same worn gray coat, Mendy spotted him from across the room. His displeasure was obvious. "Well, here comes tonight's show," Mendy muttered to Gloria, the owner, who had just stepped out her office and back. "Keep him away from the Blackwell party." Gloria snapped. "They spend $10,000 a month here. I don't want them catching a whiff of mildew." "Put him near the kitchen entrance. No one wants to sit there anyway." Mendy approached with a forced smile and dead eyes. "Good evening, Mr. Williams, was it? Right this way, sir." He led the old man to the table closest to the swinging kitchen doors, where the clatter of dishes and shouts from the line cooks mixed with the heat of the dishwasher's exhaust. Servers zipped past constantly. Everyone knew it was the worst seat in the house, a silent form of punishment. But the man simply nodded politely, placed his plastic bag on the chair beside him, and said, "Thank you. I'm very happy to sit here." Ellie, the only one who ever offered him a genuine smile, approached. "Would you like some fresh lemonade before ordering, Mr. Williams?" "You're very thoughtful, Miss Ellie. I'd love a glass," he replied, his voice low and warm, surprising her with its quiet strength. At a nearby table, a well-known literary critic was reciting a line of poetry from Keats. When he faltered and forgot the next part, it was Mr. Williams, seated near the kitchen, who gently completed the verse. "Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all/ye know on earth and all ye need to know." The entire table fell silent. The critic turned to glance at the old man with a look of surprise and curiosity. Back in the kitchen, Judge, the head chef, received a note. "The gentleman at table 17 said the sauce on the fish is missing a bit of acidity." He frowned, then remembered there had been a change in the lemons that day. Who would even notice that, he wondered. That very evening, Judge spoke with his daughter Lena over the phone. "Sweetheart, I'm not sure, but I don't think that man is just anyone." At the same time, Ellie searched online for a quote Mr. Williams had said the day before. "How someone treats the person they believe to be of no value tells you everything you need to know about their character." The top search result revealed the name: Thomas J. Williams, anonymous billionaire, infamous philanthropist, a man no one had seen publicly in over a decade. Ellie shivered. Who is he, really? That night, as light rain misted over the streets, and warm golden light still spilled over the small table near the kitchen where Thomas Williams had been seated, no one realized that the elderly guest in the tattered coat had seen everything. He hadn't just come to dine, he had come to observe. Ellie, the young server with the clear eyes and gentle voice, had been the first person at the rosewood table not to look at him with contempt. Every evening, she quietly refilled his water, checked in with a kindness not driven by tips but by something far rarer: genuine decency. Thomas noticed, just as he noticed how Judge, the aging head chef, treated every dish like a gift to family, despite Mendy's constant complaint about cutting ingredients or changing the menu to suit high-end palates. One afternoon, after a shift, Ellie sat in the break room, turning over and over the letter of rejection from Leighton Culinary Institute. Her dream, the remaining tuition, was simply out of reach, and every dollar she earned in tips went to rent. As she packed her bag, Mendy, the restaurant manager, nodded toward the dining room. "Table 12 isn't clean yet. You planning on letting the guests see that mess of napkins?" Ellie bowed her head and hurried back out, without a word. The next morning, a cream-colored envelope appeared in her mailbox. No return address, just a handwritten line on the front: "For someone who deserves it." Inside was a new acceptance letter, this time with a full scholarship from Leighton Culinary Institute, along with a note: "Go learn. Become someone who makes a difference." At the same time, in the kitchen of the rosewood table, Judge received a phone call from his daughter Lena's cardiologist. The 8-year-old girl had been waiting for a life-saving heart surgery. "A private donor has covered the full cost," the doctor said. "The operation is scheduled for next week." Judge was so stunned he had to brace himself against the counter, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. "Who? Why?" That evening, Mr. Thomas Williams returned to his usual table, wearing the same gentle smile and carrying the same quiet gaze. Ellie brought over his water, unsure what to say. He simply said, "I used to believe kindness was a luxury in this world, but you made me believe again." She was stunned. Just a few kind words. How could it have meant so much? And so it began. The good-hearted, amid a place built on pretense, finally started receiving what they truly deserved. A few nights later, the rosewood table glowed like a Broadway stage. Tonight was an important event. Crystal chandeliers glimmered across silk gowns, tailored suits, and the soft clink of fine glassware. Gloria, with her hair tied in an impeccable bun, personally made rounds to greet every table. Mendy, the ambitious restaurant manager, moved like a silent director, orchestrating staff movements with Swiss precision. Tonight was the welcome dinner from Madison Equity Group, what everyone called a restaurant's lifeline amid rising financial troubles. Thomas Williams, still in his weathered gray coat, walked through the front door as usual. But this time, he made his way directly to his old table, without waiting for the hostess. Ellie hurried over, not just with water this time. She gently placed a fresh tablecloth and a small vase of flowers in front of him, a small detail, but one filled with respect. He nodded, eyes warm, but something about him had changed. His posture, his gaze. He no longer looked like a quiet old man. He carried the weight of someone whose presence could not be ignored. When Mendy approached, clearly intent on removing him as before, Thomas looked up, his voice calm but clear. "I'll be staying. I have an appointment." "With who, old man?" Mendy sneered. "With Mrs. Madison, the representative from Madison Equity Group." He replied softly, pulling a metal card from his coat pocket. "Thomas J. Williams, Chairman, Williams Madison Foundation." The room fell silent. The VIP guests mid-toast froze. From the large table near the back, a woman stood, Mrs. Madison herself. Smiling, she walked forward. "Thomas, you finally made it." "My apologies, everyone. This is the man who initiated the entire investment proposal." Gloria turned pale. Mendy stood frozen in place. The crowd erupted in hushed whispers. Several guests quickly pulled out their phones. A search named Thomas J. Williams revealed a flood of news articles about a reclusive billionaire known for disguising himself to test the true character of the people and businesses he considered investing in. Thomas turned to Mendy. There was no anger, no resentment. "Thank you, Mendy. You showed me exactly what I needed to see." The restaurant buzzed in a wave of disbelief. But Ellie just smiled in quiet understanding. Her heart had already known the truth. And tonight, the rest of the world would know it too. The silence stretched on, as if time itself had stopped inside the rosewood table. All eyes were locked on Thomas Williams, the man they had once laughed at, dismissed, disrespected. Now sitting tall, eyes steady, as if shedding a cloak of humility to reveal the core of wisdom and authority beneath. Gloria's voice broke the silence, trembling as she tried to regain control. "Mr. Williams, if we had known who you were, we certainly would have treated you differently." He raised a hand, gently, but with undeniable authority, cutting Gloria off mid-sentence. "That's exactly the problem, Mrs. Gloria," he said calmly. "I didn't come here to be treated like a king. I came to see how this restaurant treats someone without a title, and I've seen enough." The room fell into a tense hush, broken only by the clinking of silverware at a table slow to catch on. Thomas stood up, stepping slowly into the center of the dining room. His voice rang out, steady and clear. "On many nights I came here, I was denied service, mocked, shoved into a corner near the kitchen, all because of how I looked. And those who laughed at me then sit here tonight under chandeliers, sipping decade-old wine with $10,000 tabs. But I'm sorry to say, you are no richer than you the first night, because you lack one thing, dignity." Mendy's face flushed red like the flames in Judge's kitchen. Gloria had gone pale as the table linens. "You create a place where respect is handed out based on wristwatches, not character. Staff are exploited. Customers of lesser means are shooed away. And I wonder, does that $85 foie gras still taste as fine when it's served by someone forced to smile just to keep their job?" A few diners slowly set down their forks. Their expressions shifted. Ellie watched from across the room, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt before. Pride. Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out a slim folder, handing it to the stunned representative from Madison Equity Group. "This is a full report on this restaurant. Staffing, finances, ethics, operations. If you choose to invest, make sure you know what you're investing in. A ripple of whispers swept through the dining room. Then, turning back to Gloria, his voice softened, but grew colder. I don't hate you. I'm just disappointed. This place had a chance to become something iconic, but it was the pretense that dragged it down. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving behind a glittering dining room, now stripped bare of its illusion. The air inside the rosewood table felt heavy in the wake of Thomas Williams' final words. The fake laughter was gone. In its place, an uneasy silence, like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to finally pass. Both Gloria and Mendy, now stripped of their usual airs, stood near the kitchen doors, their eyes darting away. Thomas walked slowly toward them, stopping right in front of Mendy. You called me a useless old man and told me to go back to my trash can. His voice wasn't loud, but every word dropped onto marble floor with terrifying weight. Mendy's face flushed crimson, his voice trembling. You were pretending. I couldn't have known who you were. Thomas raised his hand again, his second interruption that night. No one asked you to know who I was. But knowing how to treat people with respect, that's the bare minimum of being human. Then he pulled a thick envelope from his coat pocket and held it out in front of Mendy. This is your termination letter. Signed by me, the new owner of this restaurant. A collective gasp rippled through the dining room. Mendy stood frozen. Thomas added, his voice steady. You'll receive your final month's pay. And take this advice to heart. Use it to relearn how to be a decent human being. Mendy stumbled backward, his face ashen, then turned and hurried out, as if the ground beneath him were about to collapse. At that moment, Gloria, the once regal queen of the rosewood table, stood motionless behind the bar. Her trembling lips struggled to hold onto the last shred of dignity. Mr. Williams, this restaurant is my life's work. I built it from nothing. Thomas turned to her, his gaze softening slightly, but his voice remained firm. And then you turned it into a fortress of elitism and fear. I won't deny the effort you put in, but you forgot why people come to a restaurant, not for glamour, but for the feeling of being welcome. He placed a single sheet of paper on the bar. You'll retain 10% ownership, but starting today, you're no longer in charge. I'm going to bring the rosewood table back to what its name should mean, a place where everyone, regardless of status, has a seat at the table. At that moment, Ellie stood in the corner of the room, tears brimming in her eyes. Lena, the chef's daughter, clenched her fists as she watched her father, Judge, gnawed with quiet pride. An era had ended, and a new chapter, full of hope, had just begun. 3 weeks after that fateful night, the rosewood table remained closed, but inside, everything had begun to change, from how the tables were arranged to how people looked at each other. In the kitchen, Mr. Judge was guiding a group of young people, most of them from low-income neighborhoods on the south side of the city. A boy named Rick, who had dropped out of school due to lack of tuition, was carefully slicing onions under Judge's patient gaze. Don't rush. A knife is like a chef's heartbeat. Judge said, if you want to cook something with soul, you've got to respect every slice. That corner of the kitchen had become a small classroom, part of a community culinary training program, funded entirely by Thomas Williams and headquartered in the newly renovated kitchen of the restaurant. Out front, Ellie stood in the middle of the new test kitchen, holding the acceptance letter from the Layton Culinary Academy in her hand. The bolded words, full scholarship, looked like a golden ticket to a new life. I don't know what to say other than thank you, she told Mr. Thomas, eyes shimmering. Thomas smiled. You don't need to thank me. Just cook with your heart. And remember, when you succeed, pass that opportunity on to someone else. Just then, Gloria entered. She no longer carried the air of authority, but the humility of someone learning how to stand up again after falling hard. I've accepted a position with the Williams Foundation's Community Culinary Initiative, she said slowly. They want me to help open small eateries in underserved areas. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'll have to think about the real value of food, not just how it looks on a plate. Thomas nodded. You built an empire once, Gloria. Now it's time to use that talent to do something meaningful. Lena, standing beside her father, quietly took a photo, Mr. Judge smiling, Gloria shaking Thomas's hand with her head bowed, and Ellie clutching her scholarship letter to her chest. That photo would later be framed and hung behind the bar of the newly reopened restaurant. A reminder that everyone deserves a second chance if they're brave enough to take it. When the Rosewood table reopened in early spring, no one expected it to become a symbol of a new movement in the culinary world. It was no longer a place for elites in designer coats. Now it welcomed electricians in work boots, elementary school teachers from the next block, and groups of college students eager to try Chef Judge's legendary toast. The framed photo behind the bar of Ellie, Judge, Gloria, and Thomas smiling together drew the eyes of every guest. And on the menu, beneath the name of each dish, were small notes. This dish was inspired by the meals my mama used to cook when I was a broke kid in Mississippi. Chef Judge, this tart was the first thing I baked after learning I got my scholarship. Ellie Gray. One Saturday evening, the restaurant hosted its first open table night, where guests paid whatever they could afford. Gloria stood at the entrance, personally welcoming each guest. She was no longer the cold manager of the past, but a woman relearning how to love her craft from the beginning. That night, a weary-looking man in a worn coat stepped quietly through the door. Gloria moved to greet him, but Mendy, once the restaurant's manager, now volunteering as a server, appeared from inside. Seeing the man who had once caused him pain, Thomas, who was watching from the bar, said nothing. But when his eyes met Mendy's, there was no longer bitterness, only a quiet moment suspended between two men who had once stood on opposite ends of principle. "Good evening," Mendy said softly. "I'm here to relearn how to do this right." There was no reply, but Thomas gave a small nod, gentle as a breeze, an unspoken gesture of forgiveness. The story of Thomas Williams and the Rosewood table quickly spread across social media and culinary magazines. One New York newspaper ran a headline, "When an old man in worn clothes made an entire industry look at itself." Restaurants across the U.S. began experimenting with equal respect for all patrons policies, dropping dress codes, retraining staff in hospitality ethics, and implementing fair wages. At a culinary industry summit in Chicago, when asked if he believed his mission was complete, Thomas Williams simply replied, "I didn't come to change the industry. I just wanted people to start seeing each other as human." One autumn afternoon, soft golden light streamed through the newly renamed restaurant's windows. It now bore a different name entirely, the Hearthstone Table, a table of warmth. The name wasn't chosen by Thomas Williams, but by Ellie, who had quietly suggested it one night while wiping down tables. "I think this place feels like a hearth," she said, "somewhere people come to feel warm." The name stuck. Simple, humble, and fitting for the spirit the restaurant had built since the day Thomas revealed his true identity. Today, the restaurant functions more as a community hub than a traditional eatery. Each week, one evening is reserved to serve meals for free to those in need. The back kitchen isn't just a place to cook. It's now a training center for young people experiencing homelessness and for those reintegrating into society. Judge still runs the kitchen, but he's also a teacher now. His daughter, Lena, leads a restaurant management skills class. And Ellie, now in her second year at culinary school, returns every weekend to intern at the very place where she once served water. Gloria, no longer in her former role of management, now traveled across rural areas, serving as a consultant for community restaurant models. She once told Thomas, "I used to see only money. Now I've learned to see people." That evening, the restaurant hosted a special event called Chef's Appreciation Night, an intimate gathering, not announced in the press, not open to the media. It was just the people who had helped change this place, and in doing so, had changed themselves. As glasses were raised and a toast to Judge, Thomas quietly stood. He wore a charcoal suit, a simple gray shirt, and an untied tie. "I don't have a speech," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Just a gift." From his pocket, he pulled out a white linen napkin, delicately hand-stitched with a single elegant line. "Kindness is the only thing that multiplies when shared." He handed the napkin to Ellie, the first person who had treated him with simple human decency. She burst into tears, unable to find the words. In that moment, everyone in the room understood this restaurant didn't just serve food. It served a greater lesson about the human heart. And Thomas Williams, the quiet man once dismissed in a worn-out coat, had changed the world simply by teaching people how to truly see one another.